In the interest of time, we'll just kick it off. It's great to see everyone. Thanks for joining for the Creative Economy convening. I, of course, am so glad to be able to just be invited in to hang out with you all and talk about great stuff affecting arts and our burgeoning economy here in Delaware. Just want to make sure if everyone wants to introduce themselves, you can put it into the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to Neil. Thank him for all of his hard work and excited to hear the presentation today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Welcome, everybody. I put the agenda in the chat. We'll give folks a minute to, please follow the prompt and introduce yourselves in the chat for us, please, including if you're with an organization or you're with a particular art form. Love to know who's here with us.
This way. Ours coming.
And we'll ask you to mute if you don't mind, just for the sake of logistics. I put the agenda in the chat. If folks are joining after that, we can put a link in again. Just to give an overview of the day, we will really spend the bulk of the time discussing legal needs and services for artists in Delaware's creative economy. As a reminder, the CREATE plan that we've all worked towards had a recommendation in it to improve professionalization related to copyright and IP with the support of legal professionals. And we heard this key finding that we need to create more resources for enhanced professionalism within our sector and then make those resources widely available. And that will be essential to helping our individual artists, our arts nonprofits, and businesses achieve greater independence and contribute to a thriving creative economy. I think it's a unique topic in that our Lieutenant Governor herself is also a legal background and, a barred attorney. And so we're fortunate to be joined by Aaron Harburg today, an attorney here in Delaware, who's going to help us think through some really big questions, such as what type of legal services are needed amongst Delaware's creative economy. And then he's been doing some research into other states that have developed volunteer lawyers in the arts programs and wants to put in front of us some ideas for what could a program like that look like in Delaware and really allow this group to sort of give some feedback, kick the tires. This is our sort of sounding board here of folks most deeply involved and working in the arts to help us sort of think through what next steps could be for that sort of program. So we'll end with updates from the community. If folks have events coming up, they'll feel free to promote them in the chat. And if this is your first time joining, we host these once a quarter now with the Lieutenant Governor's Office. My name is Neil Kirschling with the Delaware Arts Alliance. We're the statewide arts advocacy organization, just serving as a supporter for this convening. So with that, I see we got a great group that's introduced themselves in the chat. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces. And I will allow Aaron to share screen and walk us through the slides he's presented. Let's hold questions maybe till the end of his slides, and then we have plenty of time to dive in and ask clarifying questions and dive into the discussion. And the last thing I'll say, I think as a point of notice, Aaron is not here in a capacity to provide people individual legal service. That's probably worth noting. Neither is Lieutenant Governor. We are just sort of talking broadly about what are legal services. And if you have individual things that would require like client attorney privilege, let's hold that for after the call. So, okay. Thank you. That's my only other caveat up front. And we're recording just to be able to share with folks who can't join us in person. All right, Aaron, dive in. Please introduce yourself.
All right, let me see if I can share my screen. As a starter, okay, let's see if this will work. I think I might have to do a different desktop.
I can also share the slides if you'd like, because I know I just asked you 20 seconds ago if you wanted to share.
Yeah, I know. It's setting up the slideshow and running the slideshow. That's essentially the problem because, if you have multiple screens, it's sort of tricky to say the least. So let's do this. Let's share my screen. If I can't get this, then you will be the one to do it.
Sure.
Can everyone see this?
Give it a second. Yep, absolutely.
All right. So I guess before I dive in, I have our two big key questions here. I'll just do a brief introduction. My name is Aaron Harburg. I am an attorney. I am licensed here in Delaware, California, and I will hopefully be licensed in New York later this year. Before becoming an attorney, I did media production for a variety of different circumstances for about 10 or 15 years. A lot of it was professional video production for corporate, government, etc. Then my family has quite a bit of intellectual property, and so I've assisted in various legal matters. And that was actually what motivated me to get into law. So just, if you Google my last name, the first thing that'll probably show up is my great grandfather, Yip Harburg, who wrote all the lyrics to The Wizard of Oz, including Probably Can You Spare a Dime, April in Paris, It's Only a Paper Moon. So if you're into musical theater or, early American music. So I've done quite a bit of work with that and sort of opened my eyes and, different things. So that's just a little bit of background about me. But, I have obviously a passion for artists and providing, I would love to spend more of my time, assisting artists and working more in entertainment. And I have a few of those clients. And I'm also on the intellectual property law section of the Delaware State Bar Association. I'm their secretary. So that's sort of my bona fides if you need them. I don't like talking about myself. So
I know I probably could have
let's,
introduced you and that would have made it less awkward, Aaron, but you did a great job, talking about your own background too.
yeah, exactly. And not great at advocating for others, not so much myself. In any event, which is true for a lot of attorneys, it turns out. So there's this idea of a volunteer legal association, and a number of jurisdictions, which you'll see on a later slide, have one of them. And so the question that I have is whether or not there's a sufficient demand within Delaware in order to justify one of these organizations, because obviously it's a significant amount of work, both in terms of running the organization as well as recruiting attorneys to do volunteer legal association. So most of the slide is just sort of talking about what the mechanics of a volunteer legal association looks like, a VLA. And so I've come up with, sort of a cheeky acronym, which would be the Delaware Volunteer Legal Association for the Arts, would be DEVA. So anyhow. So what's the problem? The main problem that a lot of artists face is that they, creative entrepreneurs of all types, is they don't necessarily have the resources to afford the legal services. And this extends not only to individuals, but also to essentially organizations. So nonprofits that may be active in the art space or entertainment space, their budgets just don't permit them to. And so that's essentially where the prospective mission of a volunteer legal association is: to empower artists, entertainers, and creators in Delaware and throughout the world by providing pro bono legal services to underserved creators and provide educational materials and organize events for artists and attorneys alike. So these VLAs tend to have like multi-pronged approaches because, the number one, thing that they do, and here's sort of a list of the different organizations that as they exist throughout the country. There's quite a few of them. There's obviously an issue with artists who are not familiar with all the nuances of intellectual property law, contract law, etc., and they need help, as well as attorneys here, I would say, who may need additional education if they do have these kinds of clients. So it has sort of several different audiences, and that's sort of the key thing about one of these organizations. It's not just for the Delaware artists, which there's a plethora, and that's sort of my main issue, is because that is the first audience, which is who are the artists in Delaware that would need this sort of assistance, legal assistance. And then Delaware is obviously the corporate capital of the world. And so I would think that an organization like this shouldn't be just restricted to our state, although our state would have priority, which is, all artists around the world who rely on, Delaware LLCs. And I can say from my practice that I have encountered more than one organization that does not do any business in Delaware, but is a creative organization outside of Delaware that relies on Delaware corporate law. So, and this is very, very frequent. I won't bore you with some of the more interesting cases that have come through Delaware, but it happens quite frequently because of the corporate structure. And Delaware continues to maintain its importance in that respect. The other here is obviously the attorneys. So potentially a VLA would provide legal education to attorneys. So those are kind of the big, priorities. The Delaware artists, number one; out-of-state artists, number two; Delaware attorneys, and then out-of-state attorneys. So the way these tend to work is they have multiple stages. The first stage is intake, as noted here on the slide, which is assessing whether or not somebody would qualify. Some organizations have a scale. In other words, let's say you're, a certain relationship to the federal poverty line where we're above it, but you still can't afford services. This is a persistent issue with the legal services community in general, is there's sort of a missing middle of people who may not be in poverty, but can't necessarily afford the retainer. I mean, the retainers that our firms charge, for example, would be out of reach of your average American. So a lot of these organizations have developed different methods in order to determine need based on a whole variety of different criteria. So that would apply to both nonprofits as well as individuals. So even if you're well above the poverty line, you could still theoretically qualify for pro bono or reduced rate services. So that process of intake is actually pretty significant, because as soon as you say, hey, we're offering reduced or free legal services, there is a massive amount of people who may say they want to take advantage of that. And it's sort of processing that. So a good chunk of these organizations spend their time just doing the intake. The next thing is obviously the case management. So let's say you have an artist who does qualify, then what they would have to do is assign them to an attorney. So some of these organizations are big enough that they have staff attorneys. So they basically have people on staff who can manage cases. But even then, usually the need is so great that they then basically assign them to other attorneys who are doing it legitimately pro bono through their various firm pro bono programs. And it's assigning them to the right attorney who can manage some of those cases. Because you may be an artist, but have some other legal need that's not directly related to the stereotypical entertainment law. Because even something like trust and estates can actually have a significant impact on an artist's legacy. So that involves coordination. And then the other half of this is sort of the education piece, which is a lot of VLAs, Washington VLA, the Philadelphia VLA, they regularly will put on sort of open to the public presentations on basic legal needs, legal information. And this is a constant issue for a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of stuff online, but I think just having a presentation on a regular basis to artists to allow them to ask questions and whatnot, I think is extremely valuable. And then there's the legal education side, which is, there's a lot of opportunities in which we could a VLA could coordinate with the Delaware State Bar Association to put on continuing legal education that would allow attorneys to basically get their credit, and then also learn about sort of how to serve entertainment clients and creative clients and artist clients better, so that if they do get those clients, they don't just ignore them and say, oh, I can't help you, but they can actually provide some of those services. And then finally, just some more community events, kind of like what we're doing today, which is to connect artists, because ultimately a lot of creative endeavors it's a group thing. It's not just one thing. So there's a lot of different legal practice areas, and I just alluded to them that trust in estates is one of them, which is not on here, which is, I probably should have included that. But this is just sort of meant to be sort of a sampling of what it would sort of look like. And on the left, you have, sort of what the services are being provided and how they're provided. And then on the right, you have sort of just a smattering of potential issues, intellectual property being on the number one, copyright, trademark, name, image, and likeness, which is an increasingly important legal area that's developing rather rapidly. Contract law, obviously licenses, split sheets, any number of contracts, corporate law, entity formation, the type of entity. And, just as an aside, I just sent Neil some potential legislation for a new type of entity that Colorado has introduced called an artist corporation, which I will be spending some time exploring a bit later. Not in this presentation, but you can Google it. And then obviously litigation. Some pro bono attorneys would be a little more shy about this because litigation could be quite protracted, but at least the initial stages of litigation, demand letters, and then also the Copyright Office has what is essentially a small claims court for copyright claims. And they are desperate for attorneys to basically be able to help a lot of pro se applicants defend their copyright in this sort of smaller case issue. So that would be like a classic example. So, this presentation ultimately is about the artists, which is what is the current state of play for legal needs among artists within the state? How dire of a need is this? What are some areas that the needs can be felt most acutely? Who in particular would we want to be serving? And are there other nonprofits, arts organizations, et cetera, that have these kind of legal needs beyond what you would necessarily need for an artist, but just for maintaining their operations as a nonprofit serving the artistic community? So, I'm still in very early stages. I have been in communications with a variety of VLAs just to get a sense of what the administrative burden would be. I would love to be able to quit my job and do this full time, but that seems a little unrealistic. So this is just sort of the initial planning stage of, assessing whether or not there is a need, sufficient demand for these kind of services to justify the next steps, which is, planning and implementation of this. So this is in some ways a discovery call where you guys are almost more important than what I'm saying, which is, what are the things that that we really need to do. So that is my very 10,000 foot view. I ran through it pretty quickly, 15 minutes, so there's plenty of time for questions, but I could definitely dive into any one of those slides in greater detail. So I can stop sharing my screen or keep it up and go back to
I
slides if
think
people
keep it up. People may want to go back to stuff. That was a really great overview, Aaron. I think let's start with like clarifying questions and questions to understand before we dive into sort of assessing demand and need here in Delaware. So yeah, would love if folks can either put questions in the chat or unmute or raise your hand and any clarifying questions or want to dive into any of the things that Aaron shared.
Erin, for at the risk of having you state the obvious to a lot of people on here, can you just talk about some of the structural challenges that are facing folks, and why kind of the pro bono model is where we're going? Like, because you could also just say, hey, we've got to develop this specialty and work with Wilmington New Law School and recruit, but can you just let us know what you've seen from experience where kind of folks, what the barriers are here?
Absolutely. So I will start by saying Delaware in general has very little entertainment or creative law to speak of. And as far as I know, I'm one of 2 or 3 entertainment quote unquote attorneys in the state. Now, entertainment law is kind of made up anyways, because it's a bunch of different areas of law applied to the entertainment industry. The law is the law. There is some case law when it comes to copyright law. But as to your specific question, why pro bono? It's because those are the people who are most likely to get taken advantage of. And I have seen both in stuff within our family and in many working with other artists that they just simply they don't know what they're running into with a lot of these contracts, because the entertainment industry is full of schemers and dreamers, and the schemers are very happy to take advantage of the dreamers. And I think, if you pay attention to the news, you'll often see even extremely powerful people attempting to get their rights back. The most high profile one with Taylor Swift is she didn't own the master rights to her own catalog for quite a time. And so she spent the money to re-record the entire catalog so she'd have her own masters. So even someone like that can run into these issues because they don't have adequate legal counsel. And just the starting retainer for a lot of these attorneys are between $5,000 and $10,000. The other alternative is that they take a significant chunk. There is no shortage of attorneys in California and New York who are perfectly happy to take advantage of artists as well, where they basically get them stuck into these permanent percentage shares where they get 5 to 15% of an artist's revenue perpetually, and an artist doesn't know any better. It's so bad that California, in their professional responsibility, has a whole separate section dealing with essentially profit sharing, both because of the startup world and because of the entertainment world. So that's essentially why a pro bono situation is critical, because the sort of stereotype of the starving artist exists for a reason. Because in order to be commercially successful, there's almost no one willing to give you an opportunity because there are so many people who want to be able to do that. So I don't know if that basically answers your question, but I would say on top of that is, these aren't necessarily people in poverty. I mean, I want to make that very clear. My thought is you'd actually do it on a sliding scale where it's something more where if it's a nonprofit that's running this, people who can afford a bit more pay more, and they essentially pay into the nonprofit, but it would still be well below the sort of retainer that they would be expected to pay if they went to one of these white shoe firms or boutiques in New York or Los Angeles.
No, that's absolutely helpful. Thank you so much for framing it. I think the California rules put it into perspective.
Kevin, I see you have your hand raised. Would you mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself too, or reintroducing yourself?
Hey, how's it going? I'm nice to see you, Neil. Kevin McCove. I'm a bespoke music composer and artist, musician. I guess my question really is just like, is this and how can, like this help to provide like a more flexible legal structure that would empower artists? Because sometimes there's like the trust, and then other times there's, like real protections that you need. I'm saying that because like as a composer, we've placed a lot of music in television and in advertisings, And like I know as a musician we get copyright thrown at us a lot. And like none of that music is copyrighted. Obviously I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not saying, hey, go do that. But like for people who place music in television and advertising, you do it at a volume rate. It's like hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of music that go out, especially if like you own a music library or something. And a lot of times that music's not copywritten. It's just registered. It's registered with your PRO, but IP and copyright protection and stuff is like so heavily pushed. It's like there's sometimes where there is legitimate legal structure that is required. There is a lot of commerce that happens where that is not the case, and it happens at a major scale. And I feel like, is there any of this that can help with that? Like helping people differentiate between what things they need legal services for, what things they don't, which things are recommended but not required, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so to answer your question, because you're getting into some very specific areas with the music law in particular. He mentioned a PRO. So for people who are not familiar, there's organizations that are called performance rights organizations like ASCAP, BMI. Those are the two big ones. And there's a CSCAM, I think is the one in Europe, that essentially their whole purpose is to collect royalties on behalf of artists. And what he mentioned is some artists will register their arts with a PRO thinking that's sufficient, but it's actually not. In order to protect your intellectual property, you have to actually register it with a copyright office, which is arguably more important. So if I can summarize this question is, where are the key areas that we can provide services? And that's exactly what I'm talking about is a lot of artists are unwary and they may not necessarily know when they need a lawyer versus when they don't. And part of what a good pro bono organization is as an attorney say, look, you don't need a lawyer here. Here's what you just need to do, and you can do it yourself. So as a very concrete example, if you are an artist who has music and you're sufficiently competent, you can probably navigate the copyright website to register them yourselves. You don't necessarily need an attorney to go and do that for you. It's not the easiest website to work with, but it is something that theoretically an artist should do. And the role of the attorney in that case is to say, you should register your copyright. You need to go do that, and here's how you do it. And, if the attorney has sufficient resources as a volunteer attorney to be able to do it for them, all the better. But definitely just providing that advice. The second thing is, as I mentioned, there'd be sort of two parts of an organization like this. One is directly providing legal services to a potential artist. And the other one is just simply doing a seminar. You could do a whole seminar on the difference between the performance rights organizations and the various ways in which you can monetize and protect your music rights. I hope that answers your question.
Like kind of, sort of, but not really. But thank you so much. I guess what I'm kind of saying is like, is there any way that this could help people to implement? Is really like what I was driving at, because like I can sit down somewhere and get this information, but it doesn't help me with implementation. It's like sitting in a math class and watching your teacher do the problem on the board, but not knowing how to do it when you get home, kind of situation.
Yeah, and so if you have a decent pro bono attorney who can help you, they would help you set up, for example, an LLC and then register the copyrights with the Copyright Office. And then, even potentially help you with registering them with the PROs. So, that's the ideal situation is if there's sufficient attorneys available, they will actually help the artist do the legal groundwork.
Any other questions from the group about the content we've heard so far before we get into sort of what types of needs are there here in Delaware? I'm providing appropriate hang time. I learned that from an educator friend. I think that's the term, right? I had a question, Aaron, about how these are set up in other states. Are they often their own organization, or do they live, wait time, I think you're right, or do they live like under, I'm thinking like we have Classy here in Delaware, a community legal aid. Do they live on their own? Do they live under a law school? Do they live in a nonprofit? What are some of the ways that you've seen this, if you've done that research into other states yet?
I have. So there's a variety of different ways in which they've done them in different states. So some of them are attached to law schools, basically as legal clinics, because law students are perfect opportunity to provide legal services for low, no cost. And then some others are completely independent organizations, like New York and California. They are standalone organizations. They have significant demand, so they're the largest that are in the country, obviously. Other ones, and I know the Maryland VLA is working actively to basically consolidate to some extent so that they can reduce the administrative burden of these different VLAs. So rather than having a bunch of standalone nonprofit organizations, that they would actually be sort of part of a national organization with sort of local chapters. I've also seen them attached to um, other volunteer associations just as sort of like a subdivision. Some of them have been a part of, a state initiative where it's essentially the state has an initiative to provide, I can't remember which state exactly it was, but I remember seeing that, where they basically have, it's sort of backed by the state as part of what the state does. And I've talked to the Delaware Volunteer Legal Association about it as a potential, collaboration. There were some issues with, just difference in mission and clientele because the intake would be different from what Classy and all these other organizations are doing. Because there's some overlap in the population, and I would argue that, enabling artists to thrive and get out of poverty is extremely important. But they're not the same issues that they often face with landlord tenant and family law.
Yeah, I could understand the mission difference too. I think I would be hesitant about positioning artists like we're fighting against the perception of like the starving artist. I mean, certainly there are artists that are in poverty, but I think overall there's like a difference in framing that might be helpful. Do you mind
Exactly.
going to the next slide that had the questions and we can open it up for others to react to those? I think there's yeah, so I mean, this is a different way of asking the question we put in the agenda, which is like, what are the legal services, or what legal services are needed amongst Delaware's creative economy? So we'll open it up for anybody to react. Obviously, many of you are with nonprofits or your own for-profit, some individual artists on the call. Maybe you work with other individual artists and you've seen the needs. So yeah, let's just open it up. And again, don't feel like you have to be like, I got sued about XYZ thing, but rather like you can just talk about the types of legal needs we might have in Delaware. Yeah, Brett.
Hey, good morning, everyone. From a organizational standpoint, we always need help with legal, either, I mean, contracting is always a big one for us. But then also there's little things that pop up that are usually um, simple things like um, laws around staffing and some of those kind of questions that we want to make sure we get right.
When you say contracting, contracting with artists, contracting to rent your space, what types of like
All the
contract?
above.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's helpful. I see Tracy put in the chat, landlord tenant negotiations is an area she's seen need. I get a call once every 8 months from someone who is looking for a lawyer to review a contract as an artist. They've ranged from people getting like YouTube like partnerships where they want to they're Delaware-based content creator and they're like working with YouTube. Um, is mostly related to sort of content creation.
YouTube is a big area.
Jen in the chat, Anita I've encountered is writing, reading, and comprehending contracts, basic education on lease agreements, sales contracts, and licensing. Thank you, Jen, for sharing that. And others, Candace is echoing that for contract support. I think you're echoing Brett's potentially.
I would say this is Sandra James with the Bigs, and I would just add that often organizations in the arts are being encouraged to partner with other organizations for obvious reasons, and we're one of those. Having legal support to develop an MOU or an agreement of a partnership that will be longstanding would always be appreciated and helpful. We often look for pro bono support to do that. So to have a more concerted effort would be great.
Thank you, Sandra. That's really helpful. Others in the chat, Kevin and Carol, sharing other IP protections, contracts, copyright logo, small claims. I'll share an example that someone sent me who couldn't be on the call. Chapel Street players, they had to negotiate an entirely new facility, like they moved where their theater was, and all of the legal contracts with like getting a new space.
To Aaron's point about how entertainment law is just all the other laws applied. One of the things that I've spoken to a lot of nonprofits about is all the state regulations in particular, and making sure that there's compliance with things like paid family medical leave. And so I think regulatory might be a place where we need to make sure folks are supported.
It's a great point. I don't know how many folks too ever get federal grants. I know when I started here at the Arts Alliance and we had the federal grant to develop the Create Plan, it was like a 100-page document that I was expected to sign in my first week of being here. And I was like, somebody smarter than me needs to review this with me line by line. So we sought pro bono legal support at that point, which was super helpful. We got a lot of great comments in the chat. I'll give folks a little bit more time to think through. And then, yeah, if there are any sort of other questions about how could this program work in Delaware, how might it benefit us? I mean, happy to field any reactions and questions for Aaron while we have him.
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge, and this is a little bit of the teacher's curse, which is you don't know what your students don't know. And sort of similarly, there's sort of a situation where as an attorney, I'm sort of aware of the issues that can arise. And many artists, I mean, this is precisely the problem, aren't aware of those issues. So it's sort of me asking an unfair question of like, what are your legal needs? It's like, well, you may not even know what those legal needs are, you know?
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I would like to ask is, in terms of interest, you know, how much would people be interested in the kind of public-facing seminars about legal issues that are intended for more of a lay audience? Does that seem like something people would be interested in?
And
So
seeing
I think,
thumbs up.
Can I
Yeah.
have a
I mean, I think
question?
that's probably also a great way to assess what other artists are out there that have these needs that aren't the ones who are the most plugged in and being able to join these calls, you know, on a Thursday morning.
yeah, that makes sense. All right.
Grant, I see you
Matt,
raise your hand
Matt asked a
too.
question.
Yeah,
Franco and then Kevin. Yeah.
I just what you were just saying about in terms of kind of training and education, and I'm really just thinking for me personally, it would be great for my board to be part of that education process. Yes, me, but as my general census is try to bring in more eyes whenever I'm dealing with contracts or any other things. So figuring out a way that board members could get involved with that because they are supposed to be the ones kind of overseeing things supposedly. So.
Yeah, that's great. I see I love the thumbs up feature. I feel like this is new. We're able to in real time monitor, you know, the likes. It's like the Twitterification of Zoom. Kevin, I think you had your hand raised soon to react to Aaron's question.
Yeah, it's kind of like a question. Like, would it be like in addition to maybe like the seminars that you're thinking about and stuff, would it be possible for like a firm or like just the Delaware Bar Association or whatever to operate like a RAG system based on all of the entertainment law and situations that we have, where I could go on to a RAG system, which is like a notebook LM type of situation, right? And then you guys could collect all the data from every question that everybody goes in there and asks. Like imagine you have a chat bot that is then virtually interpreting every single type of question. It's going to categorize everything. So you don't have the same problem you just mentioned earlier. Like, oh, I don't know what the issues are. Now you would. And then also we would be getting answers back because there would be all the legal documentation inside of the RAG that would be, you know, like real legal stuff. Is that possible to do, like to set something up like that so that every artist in Delaware could just go to a site, get all their legal things like not answered per se, but like, hey, now I know if I need to go to the next step and ask the Delaware Bar if I need this thing or that thing.
Come on, we gotta go this way.
Tracy, I think you need to mute yourself there.
I think, you know, just for our audience, RAG, what he means is retrieval augmented generative response. So that's a particular type of artificial intelligence chatbot, which rather than just relying on a pre-existing database, sort of goes to specific sources and then provides answers. So whether or not it is possible to develop a custom LLM that has its own private library of legal issues related to artists, I mean, all things are possible. You just need about $2 million to do that. So I just don't think that's a realistic solution. I'm sure there are people who are more plugged into that space that would be able to do that. The other issue is we wouldn't want it to come from the Delaware State Bar Association because, I mean, all the leading research on LLMs is that they will continue to hallucinate, and you need to be 100% accurate. You can't even have 99. So legal services in particular are just not as amenable to that. Now, if it's for general purposes, I think maybe having an FAQ on a website or something may sort of get at the same idea rather than coming up with one of these solutions. So for context, I am pretty aware of the artificial intelligence world. I gave a presentation, actually continuing legal education presentation, I think it was last year, on copyright law as it intersects with general artificial intelligence as part of the Delaware State Bar Association. And my husband is a vice president of marketing for an AI company, so I'm aware of the strengths and benefits. But also as an attorney, I'm aware of some of the pitfalls. So I would just be more cautious about that thing than I would about some other potential boring solutions that I'm suggesting. So.
I want to speak to a few things in the chat. Aaron, definitely there's agreement around the need for education. Vanessa raised the point about artists being paid on time and helping to navigate that. Vanessa, I'd love to touch base offline if that is something that's happening around Delaware. There are some other states that have begun to look at legislation to help require certain payment and protection for artists and creatives and give them some protection in that payment process. And maybe we can kick that around offline. And then Janice had a great question for you, Aaron, about what is the state requirement or legal requirements as sellers, artists, they need to create an LLC, or legal need to attain an LLC or new business. And I think that could help inform ongoing education as well.
I mean, that's actually part of what gets me most interested in this is Delaware has a very unique corporate legal structure that is relied on by the entire world. And I see no reason why we shouldn't lean into that, not only for local artists, but artists everywhere, and sort of discuss how Delaware can benefit artists and what you would want to do, because it's not just LLCs, limited liability companies. It's also corporations, when you would want a corporation versus an LLC, or when you would want a nonprofit, when it makes sense to start a nonprofit, how to start a nonprofit. There's a whole bunch of corporate issues that relate directly to the entertainment industry and the creative industry that I absolutely think would be great, to both educate others on as well as provide direct legal services.
All right. Any other questions for Aaron? My last question is, Aaron, what else is helpful to you in this needs assessment process? This is a group of really creative thinkers with really broad networks across the state. Like, who are you looking to get in front of or learn from or talk to? Interested in sort of other connections or audiences to make any sort of similar presentations? Like, what's next for you?
That's a great question. I think what's next for me is to really build the network more than anything. I'm still, Delaware's a small town, quote unquote, in some ways, but it's still important for me to make connections to various arts organizations. And I have made a few, but it's still an ongoing process of just sort of getting in touch with everyone. So, I mean, if you want to reach out to me or Neil, and he can put you in touch with me, just to sort
No,
of.
Aaron, you can put your email in the chat. I'm happy to let the floodgates go if folks want to follow up.
All right, great.
But I'm certainly happy to be involved if it's necessary. And also if anybody on the call just wants to talk this through with an artist perspective, happy to talk that through. But yeah, if folks are willing to help Aaron or make other connections or put him in front of other audiences, yeah. I think it's a great next step.
And Neil and Aaron, I think it's also helpful to see where people are going now. How are they plugging this gap, their needs, right? And so,
yes,
if they can let you all know how they're piecing together this service, if they can't pay for it, that would be helpful too.
That's a great point. Lieutenant Governor, any other closing thoughts on the Volunteer Legal Association and legal services before we move on to community updates? All right, let's move on. Last part of our agenda is just updates from, we'll do Arts Alliance. I see Jessica's on the call from the DDOA and the Lieutenant Governor's office. And then, time permitting, we'll take other updates from this sector, and folks can also use the chat. Why don't I actually start with Charlene and Lieutenant Governor? I know you guys have some exciting arts updates on your own. I can pull up the website if it's helpful, but to speak to a new initiative that you all are embarking on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am really excited to share that we are launching a statewide arts competition for kids in kindergarten through 12th grade to give them an opportunity to have their art displayed in one of our state buildings. And so we also could not do this without this organization. Jess has been great. Thank you so much to everyone who's helped share this information out. So the theme of the competition is why I love Delaware. And as the parent of a first and third grader who recently got to have their still fruit displayed at the Blue Ball Barn, I know how impactful this type of engagement can be, especially to young minds who are just excited to be seen and recognized in their own right, as little artists. So if you could, we'll make sure and send the information to you all. If you could share it with kids and parents, it's really easy because the submission form is just a photo, and we will be in touch with folks who will kind of go through the process after the competition gets on its way. Any questions I can answer? We are asking for everything to be in by the end of May, the 22nd. Okay, great. Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm excited to see what we get, all the masterpieces that come through.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think I might have seen on social media too recently, Brett, at the Contemporary, that Congresswoman Sarah McBride has the Congressional Arts Competition. So it's nice that we have one in Congress and we'll have one in Delaware as well. That's great. Anything else from your office, Charlene or Lieutenant Governor? And if not, I'll ask Jessica to give any updates from the Division of the Arts.
I will just say that our next two meetings are May 7th and then June 11th.
Yeah.
And they're going to be via Zoom.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Jessica.
Thanks, Neil. Hi, everyone. We are wrapping up the sort of public engagement part of our strategic plan. And I just want to say to Aaron and Neil, Lieutenant Governor, and everyone on the call that we're getting the very preliminary findings back from the public engagement piece of what we're doing. And we are hearing from the community that there is a need for a volunteer lawyers for the arts type of organization in Delaware. So just we're nowhere near publishing our strat plan yet. That'll be in July, but just to give you all a sense of the very first findings that are coming in draft form to us are indicating a need of a service like this from our community. So perfect timing, Aaron.
Great.
And I just want to thank everyone who has been involved in both our strategic planning meetings and our grants evaluation meetings. Those are all wrapped up at this point, and we've gotten our reports and recommendations in regarding our grant evaluation project. And we are going to be getting our strategic plan draft back in the next month or so. So we're very excited. We're going to start very publicly launching and talking about the results of these two big projects this summer. So stay tuned for that. But I did just want to thank everyone. I know we've asked you to do a lot of surveys and come to a lot of forums, and you have. We had 3,000 people respond to our strat plan survey.
Wow.
Hundreds of people come to public forums. So just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. As you all know, we take the public facing piece of our planning work very seriously. We listen to you all, and we take what you're saying into consideration as we develop our strategic and operating plans. So great job, everyone. We're wrapping that up. You won't be getting any surveys from us anytime soon. We'll give you a break. But more to come this summer on those two big projects.
Great job, Jess. And you'll be hearing from my lawyer, Aaron, if you try and survey us anymore.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I don't, okay, bye. Anything else, Jess? Or if not, I can jump in.
Andy, is there anything that I missed in terms of big things coming up?
I think the only big one is that likely in the next 2 weeks we'll be launching a new website for the division. And so you'll likely see a new common look and feel for us in the coming weeks. So all to say, some patience and flexibility if there might be a little few bugs here and there as we launch it. But we expect by May 1, it'll be fully up and raring to go.
Thanks, Andy.
To give folks a quick update from our end at the Arts Alliance, this is the busiest legislative session in the arts that I've ever seen. And granted, I've only been here for 4 years, but I'm going to say maybe ever. We are really trying to track all of the legislation that's coming out, some of which we've introduced, some of which has happened just because I think there's growing interest, and the work that we're doing with the CRAE plan and the caucus is generating additional interest. We're starting to track all of those bills in one common place. And Jordan, maybe you can help me with chats in the link here. This is going to be an evergreen document. Folks can bookmark it if they want, refer back to it, figure out what's happening down in Dover. We're open to feedback if folks are like, I don't understand this, or this could benefit, this could be easier to understand in certain ways. It's a new tool for us. There's about 6 or 7 bills currently introduced and others that we think will come down the pike. Feel free to join us at the Arts and Culture Caucus meeting on May 14th to learn more about these bills. We will be down in Dover in Legislative Hall. The registration link is in the chat. We absolutely packed the room at our March caucus meeting, and sorry for those that were standing out in the hallway and couldn't get in. Lieutenant Governor can attest she saw everybody up in the seats of the Senate gallery when we moved into the Senate, but we had over 100 people come to the March caucus meeting. And just really, really cannot thank folks enough for showing up and being such exuberant advocates, because it makes a difference. As a follow-up to conversations that we've had here in this forum, this time last year, the Lieutenant Governor helped us convene a group of educators and students to talk through creative economy pathways. We've since released a report that the Department of Education drafted. That was the topic of our March meeting. We are already passing some legislation to implement the recommendations of this report, and it will be sort of an ongoing area of focus for us. So if folks didn't get to see those results or couldn't come in March, I wanted to make sure they saw this report. And then lastly, one particular piece of legislation that is timely, there is a piece of legislation that would reform Delaware's secondary ticket market and govern how tickets are resold in Delaware. There's a hearing coming up next week about that bill, and the Arts Alliance, separate from this call, is hosting an information and action session right after this call. If you're interested in joining us, we'll hear from some Delaware venues and national experts to learn more about this bill. So that's it for us. Lots of stuff going underway. Appreciate everyone's participation and attention. And let's use the last 10 minutes, please, or 5 minutes or so. Use the chat to throw any other events coming up from your end. And also happy if folks want to raise their hand and unmute and be like, hey, this is coming up. I want everybody to know about it. So we'll open to sort of other updates from the community.
And remember, anything that you send to LG Info will include not only to the folks on this call now, but for everyone who's on our listserv to get that information.
Hi there. Hope everyone can hear me all good. I'm in a coffee shop, so sorry if
Hey,
it's a
Mariah.
little loud. But just wanted to share that Delaware Shakespeare is doing a reading of a new play called Caribbean Kings. We'll be performing it Saturday night at Sam's, and it features a queer telling of King Lear that's written by a local Philly playwright, and it's got elements of drag, Caribbean life, and questions about who is your family. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat, but definitely encouraging folks in the queer community, especially, but truly for anyone to come out and see it. It's going to be a really great piece.
Thank you. Thanks, Christina, for putting events in the chat too.
I'll just mention for the bigs, we have on May 10th, our annual Adopt an Artwork student exhibition. And much like the Lieutenant Governor's program, this many phenomenal artworks every year. It usually is one of our biggest openings between students, families, teachers. There's over 1,500 students involved this year in this program. So please do come out and support those young artists. Also, we have a first annual event at the Bigs coming up on May 16th. It's Bigs Art and Sound. And this is a celebration for local artists, musicians, and vendors, and it will be outside. So please come and enjoy. We'd love to have you. I'll drop links in the chat as well.
Thank you. And thank you. I don't know if it's Chris or Cheryl Mack. Thank you for sharing tonight's fireside chat too. Yeah, Brett.
I had one. Thank you, Aaron. I'm sorry. Thank you, Neil, for mentioning our congressional art competition. We have that up for about 2 more weeks, so come check that out. There's some really great stuff. And then next month we're going to have our University of Delaware exhibition for the MFA students and winners of some awards from the undergrad program. It's a quick show. It's only about a month, but it's a great show because you get to see what's coming out of UD, and it's often very exciting work.
Hi, everyone. It's Carol from the Christina Cultural Arts Center. We invite you out on Friday night for open mic. We're going to have open mic gospel edition. So that should be pretty fun. So that starts around 7 p.m. So we say, come on down to 705 North Market Street. And if you can't make it then there's also June the 26th. We're going to have a 90s line dance party. So come on out with your best 90s gear and have a great time with us. So that's what we're having at the moment, but there are other things coming down the pike. We'll keep you informed then.
Carol, they may make you the MC of one of those events. You've got such great energy. Be careful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey,
Joe.
folks.
I see. That's Joe. Actually, Tracy, because you're in the call, and then Joe. Go ahead, Tracy.
I'm hiding in my car because I'm on a break from school. I just actually wanted to share a little something that's kind of cool. We are offering our very first state Delaware Thespian Workshop this weekend. It's all student-led. Our state thespian officers that have been at some of the Arts and Culture Caucus meetings have put this together. We have professors from University of Delaware coming. We have artists from all over the state coming to teach our high school and middle school thespians. It's at MOT. It's on our website or on our Instagram, Delaware Thespians. There's still a link and people can still sign up. But we have over 60 to 70 kids coming on Saturday for the first state workshop.
That's incredible. That's so great, Tracy. And for it to be student-led, you've got some really incredible students involved. So we're looking forward to hearing how it goes. Hey, Joe, great to see you.
Hey, Neil, how are you? Great to be seen. Just taking in everything, just checking out what's going on in the arts community. But I did want to say to Sandra, I'm going to be down there later today to see you. I hope you know that. I'll be there at 2:00 today. Looking forward to meeting you.
I do know that, and I'm looking forward to meeting you too. Thanks,
Joe. It's
coming,
great
Joe.
to have these are folks from the more traditional economic development side. Joe's with Delaware Prosperity Partnership, for those that don't know, but has a background in media and the arts. So we're certainly appreciative that you're participating. All right, I'm going to call a wrap then on this. If there's any final comments, put them in the chat. But just to underscore what the Lieutenant Governor said, the next 2 meetings are actually open to all of the Lieutenant Governor's affinity groups. Charlene, you have a number of these groups. Like any other context you want to give us on this? Like it's not just going to be us. We're going to be amidst other people. We got to be on our best behavior, everybody. But we got to show up. So yeah, can you talk to us about this?
All the affinity groups, all my respective Black leaders, faith leaders, Hispanic Latino leaders, veteran affairs leaders as well, and open to you as well. For context, the May 7th one will be led by the Delaware Libraries in celebration of their 125th anniversary. And then on June 10th, our office will be leading a legislative briefing just to update you all in the respective Finney groups we have about what's going on in Leg Hall leading up to June 30th. So we hope you
Okay.
can all join us.
June 10th or 11th? I want to make sure I got the date right.
June 11th.
Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure that everybody on our listserv gets sent out. If you found your way into this Zoom room somehow without being on the listserv, just put your email in the chat and we'll make sure it gets included. All right, I think that's it. Lieutenant Governor, I think you have the gavel to close us out.
I don't have my gavel with me, but in spirit, of course, always. It's always a pleasure to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you in person soon. Have a good one.
Thank you.